What's up, everybody? Welcome into Group Chat Football Live. I'm Peter Ariz alongside D Money, and welcome in to our daily show talking college football recruiting, transfer portal, and much more. Again, we go every day live here. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You guys are really helping us grow this page as we get to connect with fan bases across the country. Really enjoying learning more about all these different fan bases and these rosters. It's been awesome, D. And today we will take an early look as ESPN has put out their projections for the college football playoff next season. And of course, it's really early here. We do know there's going to be a whole nother transfer portal period after the spring here, but you have a pretty good idea of what these rosters are going to look like. Coaches are in place for the most part. Quarterbacks are in place. And ESPN and Bill Connolly giving their best go at projecting what it could look like in 11 months' time.
Yeah, very interesting list. Pete, pull up the tweet with the bracket because, Bill Connolly, analytics guy, known for being, I don't say provocative because he's thoughtful in what he does, but he's not afraid to kind of get people talking and make bold statements. I remember when he made the list of the best college football teams of all time. He had that Oklahoma Sam Bradford team that lost to UF in the championship as the best team of all time, according to the numbers. So that got a lot of people talking, sold a lot of books. But he's doing something similar here. When you look at the article, it's not really focusing necessarily only on the numbers. He's using some numbers, but a lot of it is on trends. Kind of, these are the teams that have made the playoff in the past. Of course, you only have 1 year of data for the 12-team playoff, and make some bold predictions, and kind of gets people talking, right? It's just finished the 25 season. You want to get people started talking early, so a lot to dig into here.
Yeah, I mean, look, the first thing that jumps out to me is that he's expecting the return to form for Georgia and Alabama right there, just popping out of me in the middle of the screen there. And then Louisville as the 4 seed, would have them winning the ACC there with Utah and the Big 12 coming in ahead of the ACC technically. But the Louisville thing really, really was popping out at me. Not a team that I've heard that much early buzz for. Miller Moss going to be the quarterback there, we expect, as he transferred over there. And Jeff Brom has done a really good job with quarterbacks over the years. So I expect them to be good, but I did not expect them to see them here as the ACC projected champs.
Yeah, the safe pick here would be Clemson, right? Clemson's going to be the highest rated team going into the season. Clemson won it last year. Clemson's been the best team in the ACC for about a decade. So that's going to be your much safer bet, and what most people are going to pencil into the playoffs. His reasoning, Clemson has a tough schedule. They play SMU, they play Duke, they play some pretty tough ACC teams, and he's projecting Louisville to beat Clemson again, right? They beat them last year, to beat them again this year and get in there. When you look at Louisville, Clev Lubin, the pass rusher from Coastal Carolina, 9.5 sacks. He's going to help a lot. Miller Moss, good fit, accurate passer, very smart. You bring back Isaac Brown, one of the most explosive players in the ACC, the freshman last year from Homestead, Florida, from the Miami area. Really did a nice job for Louisville, bring that explosive element to the running game. But when you look at what they lost, Monroe Mills, offensive tackle, who really was a surprise kind of interconference transfer to UVA. I thought they really could have used him back. Quincy Riley to the NFL draft. Ashton Gelati, deep pass rusher, one of the most high motor players in the country, to the NFL draft. Ja'Cory Brooks, another South Florida guy, wide receiver, going on to the NFL, one of the best receivers in the ACC this year. Jamari Johnson, the big talented tight end, going across the country to Oregon. So you lost a lot. Like I said, mentioned, you brought in Lubin, you brought in Miller Moss, Darius Thomas, a safety / linebacker from WKU. I watched him in high school, like his game. But overall, I think you probably lost more than you brought back in. It's not a program that recruits at a particularly high level. So to me, that over Clemson, bit of a surprise.
Yeah, and just a few other things that stick out. The other ACC team here being North Carolina. So Bill Connolly's betting on Clemson, Miami, who was the team to beat there in the ACC for most of the season last year and was in the mix until their loss against Syracuse. Then SMU, who of course had their run to the playoffs last year, and he's betting on Bill Belichick, who we've covered the portal. We're big fans of what he's building over there. But I'm not quite sure because, again, we're basing this off of it's a combination of what we saw last year, what you have coming back, what you've brought in through the portal. And I don't know that at this point I've seen enough impact transfers to Carolina. You don't know for sure who the quarterback's going to be there. Is it going to be the transfer from Purdue? Is it going to be one of the younger guys, such as Bryce Baker coming in? But to just project them as the 11th seed, you're really banking on Bill Belichick making an impact right away.
Yeah, I think what he's saying, reading the article, is that somebody's going to be the new Indiana, new coach, ton of transfers, overnight success, and that UNC, because it's Bill Belichick, has the best chance to be that team. We've covered all their portal moves. They've added a ton of size on the offensive line. They've added a bunch of 25 recruits. They've really beefed up the team physically. The concerns, like you mentioned, Ryan Brown from Purdue at quarterback, Bryce Baker, the young player from North Carolina, can he get it done as a first-year starter? I think that's going to be the big question. You look at Indiana, they had Curtis Rourke, an extremely experienced player, step right in and do what he does in the Big Ten. So that was the difference from what you see on UNC on paper right now and with Indiana last year. I think UNC, if you're going to talk about a playoff run, that quarterback position needs to get settled, whether it's Brown, Baker. They're going to be learning on the job. I think the experience factor at quarterback will be a limiting factor for UNC in year one.
See a few interesting matchups there with the Michigan-Ohio State one top left. And I think it's inevitable that one of these years, those two teams are going to face off in the playoffs. It's going to happen. They're going to be in the mix too often for it not to happen.
It's so interesting. At one point, maybe a month and a half ago, it looked like Michigan was trending very much up. They had just gotten Bryce Underwood. They had beaten Ohio State in that rivalry game, beat Alabama. Ohio State was kind of on the ropes. Then, of course, they win the national championship going that run. But still, if you talk about next year, Michigan, they lose a lot both teams lose a lot to the draft. You'll see a lot of these guys day one, day two. They're in April in the NFL draft. But in terms of Michigan, you bring in Bryce Underwood. You're feeling pretty good about that. We'll see how it all plays out with Michigan rebuilding that defense without some of the players they lost on the defensive line, secondary. But Ohio State, they're replacing pretty much an entire team to the NFL. New quarterback, right? New running backs. You do bring back Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs, maybe the first and second best players in the country. That's going to help. But you lose pretty much your entire defensive line. In the secondary, you bring back Ibn, that's going to help. But you lose Ransom. You lose a ton just all over your front seven. I think this is going to be a rebuilding year for Ohio State. Rebuilding year for Ohio State's a great year for anyone else. The rankings, to me, I feel okay about this one. And this would be an extremely interesting first-round matchup.
And then you have let me pull it back up there. Boise State, of course, everyone's going to immediately say the obvious, which I'm going to do as well, that Ashton Jeanty is going to be gone. So completely new look team there. I think personally, I would probably lean towards UNLV right now, getting that spot as the non-P4. So that would be my personal prediction there. As Sergeant Morhew just hopped in here. I'm not saying it just because you just got in here, Sergeant, but I do think that UNLV would be my leader in the clubhouse for that spot.
Yeah, I agree. The two spots that jump out to me, Boise State making it there in 12 seed, and then Utah as the projected Big 12 champion, actually as the number 3 seed. So Utah not only making it, but having a better record than the ACC champion or better ranking than the ACC champion. The reasoning in the article that Connolly wrote for ESPN was that Utah was 1-5 in close games. That varies from year to year. Big 12's got a lot of parity. Utah traditionally is one of the best teams. I don't want to say in the Big 12 because Utah's new to the conference, but just in terms of the teams in the Big 12, Utah's had a level of consistency that's better than most of the programs. 1-5, you project that to turn around. Putting a lot on Devin Dampier, the new quarterback from New Mexico, running quarterback, very dynamic, not as productive throwing the football. But Utah's quarterback situation was so dicey They kind of getting back to their roots, running the football with their quarterback, running the ball. That one to me makes more sense. I could see the vision there. Although to me, Texas Tech, with the way they're spending, the complete nature of their roster, where you have a veteran quarterback, you got dynamic running backs, really invested in the offensive line, really invested in the defensive line, the secondary. I mean, you go up and down that Texas Tech roster, pass catchers, tight end. They have really upgraded what they're doing on both sides of the ball, and they were a pretty decent team this past year. So I like Texas Tech as your Big 12 champion just because of the steadiness at coach. You've added 2 new expensive coordinators. You got a quarterback that is a veteran, and what they've done just at every single position. Money talks. Remember this time last year, we were talking about Ohio State pretty much all offseason. They got Caleb Downs, they got Judkins. All the investment Ohio State made eventually paid off. I think you'll see something similar with Texas Tech in the Big 12.
And then just a couple more things to point out here. You see that potential rematch there, Notre Dame and LSU. I call it a rematch, but the Brian Kelly matchup really is what I was getting to. And they see, or I should say Bill Connolly sees Notre Dame, replacing Riley Leonard and losing some of those offensive linemen, being just okay here. And we'll just talk about what their prediction is, that Penn State wins the national championship. And you understand Drew Aller's coming back, Nick Singleton, that backfield is staying intact. But receivers-wise, that was a weakness for them last year. And I don't know that they have the weapons added to the roster just yet.
Yeah, with Penn State, it's going to be about their identity. Do they just say, listen, we're going to be like Michigan, right? We may have a first-round quarterback in Drew Aller, but we're going to continue to run the ball. I don't think that they've added receivers that are better than the receivers they lost, and receiver was a big question mark for them. So to me, this is going to look much more like the Michigan team that won the championship, where even though Drew Aller's there, you're going to treat him more as a game manager who makes the big play and is efficient. And the identity of your team is going to be Singleton, going to be Katron Allen, and then rebuilding that defense. Obviously, adding Jim Knowles, a huge boost to that defensive staff. I like that matchup of Notre Dame and LSU. Those are 2 teams to me that are very interesting. Expect Notre Dame, whether it's Carr, whether it's Angeli, I think they're going to pass the ball better next year. Bring back Greathouse, add in Malachi Fields, that offensive line, even though you lost some guys with a lot of experience, Spindler and Coogan, you got a lot of young talent there. That offensive line is going to be arguably the best in the country. I think their passing game will improve. Jeremiah Love's not going anywhere, so that running game should be one of the best, if not the best in the country, even without Riley Leonard's running. You do replace Al Golden as defensive coordinator, but I think Marcus Freeman, with his defensive pedigree, he'll get those boys on point. So I think it'll be more complete Notre Dame team this year. Obviously, they went to the championship this past year. LSU, disappointing under Brian Kelly so far, but you bring back Garrett Nussmeier, who should be one of the best, if not the best quarterbacks in the Southeastern Conference. You give him Barian Brown. You've added Braylon Moore up front. Patrick Payton rushing the passer. Mansour Delane, really talented corner. Jakeem Jackson, another talented corner. You're trying to give Blake Baker the tools to be successful on defense. Jack Pyburn, physical player from a rival at LSU. Nick Anderson, big, athletic, talented receiver from Oklahoma who flashed a lot as a young player. I just see what they did in the portal, what they bring back a quarterback. Now you have some continuity on the defensive staff and with the head coach. I expect LSU to make a significant jump. And if there's an LSU team, or sorry, SEC team that shakes this up a little bit, I can see LSU being that squad.
And we're already talking about them, so let's get to the next topic here. And that is the new addition to LSU's staff. Lance Guidry, former Miami defensive coordinator the last couple seasons, was previously the defensive coordinator and head coach at McNeese State. And then directly before Miami was the defensive coordinator at Marshall, did a really good job there with, not the most talent in the world. His first year at Miami, it was a pretty solid showing, as people who cover the team. We have our website, canesinsight.com. So we followed this situation closely with Guidry. This year was, nothing short of a disaster. The defensive side of the ball was the reason why Miami did not go farther this season, did not make the playoff. But at the end of the day, if you're Guidry, you land on your feet back home in Louisiana at LSU, and you can kind of rebuild yourself there.
Yeah, and the report from Football Scoop is that he'll be an analyst, so he's not going to be coaching a position necessarily. He'll be collecting his buyout and serving as an analyst, as so many defensive coordinators, head coaches have done at the SEC level. Guidry, somebody, it's funny. So last year, this time, Miami fans were worried that he might leave to LSU and get the job that Blake Baker got. So it changed very quickly. Last year, 48th in scoring defense with the Miami Hurricanes, 24.1 points per game. Dropped to 70th this year, 26.7 points per game. He had the number one offense in the country as well. So that's why Guidry came under such fire to have the number one overall offense in America and not make the playoff. Obviously, a lot of that fault fell on the defensive side of the ball. I think with him, very much the loss of talent in the secondary. He wasn't able to adjust. That was a position Miami did not do a very good job of recruiting, whether it was in high school or the portal. So Guidry is someone who likes to play a lot of man coverage. He's a safeties coach, or he was a safeties coach for Miami. So when that talent dropped off, you have Cam Kitchens, who's now starting for the Los Angeles Rams, leaving the secondary. You really struggled to replace your cornerbacks. He just couldn't adjust to what Cam Kitchens did from a communication standpoint, couldn't adjust to having corners that were unable to play man coverage, which he would rather do consistently and effectively. So because of that, you had communication issues. Before the snap, it was often, a circus, and you couldn't stop the pass. Syracuse, when they knocked Miami out of the playoff, did whatever they wanted in the passing game. But Guidry, as a coach, known for having a very good mind, seeing things in opposing offenses, was a hot name just last year. They at Marshall, beat Notre Dame, really had Marshall playing very good football. But he is a Louisiana native. He is from Welsh, Louisiana, played at McNeese State, coached at McNeese State, bounced around, had situations just kind of off the field with DUIs that maybe hurt his ability to progress as a coach. Got a second chance with Marshall, turned that into an opportunity with Miami. I think for what he will do at LSU as an analyst, he is going to add value. He knows the program. He knows the area, and he's a good communicator, well-liked guy. I could see this being a fit for him, and maybe he earns his way once the contract runs out with the Hurricanes. They're still paying him to an on-field role. He's not that, old that he can't be a position coach. He's got a lot of energy. He's only 53 years old. So to me, this is a good move to get somebody in your program that fits your program and has seen a lot of things and could add a trusted voice to the room.
Yeah, you said it best. I think he's a guy who has a lot of good ideas. And it wasn't just the struggling that he lost a couple safeties at Miami in terms of what they brought on the field, but those were the quarterbacks for the defense. He trusted them to kind of get everyone lined up. And, based on what I heard, he didn't have, he tried to put some of that responsibility on other spots, and the communication at Miami, as you saw, if you watch any Miami games this year pre-snap, it wasn't good. But again, that's not to say he can't play a valuable role on this LSU staff and bring certain things to the table. You remember a couple seasons ago, his first year at Miami, the Canes had a lot of depth issues on the interior defensive line. He was forced to kind of play a 3-3-5, something that he wasn't used to. He found some success there. So he's a creative defensive mind, but getting those ideas to work on the field consistently, that's, a whole nother thing.
Yeah, he's someone also has head coaching experience at McNeese State, so he's another head coach in the room. Loves to play games with the defensive line. We'll see how much input he has on that part of the game with Blake Baker and LSU. But if Blake Baker's another one who was a defensive coordinator in Miami, so you really have two former Miami defensive coordinators in the same building. They didn't overlap, so there's no connection there. But it's guys we've seen firsthand, Pete. I think both of them like to make plays in the backfield, like to get behind the line of scrimmage and have tackles for loss. They're more about attack. Every defensive coordinator says they're about being aggressive. I think these are two guys who they measure their success by plays in the backfield, by aggression, by being athletic and getting on the other side of the line of scrimmage, as opposed to two-gapping, just being more fundamental is the wrong word, just being more sound and consistent as opposed to making plays. They're going to lean more on the playmaking side. And I think with LSU's defensive personnel, you talk about guys like Patrick Payton, guys like Perkins, really athletic players. They fit what Blake Baker likes to do historically and what Guidry likes to do.
Without a doubt. So we have almost 30 on with us live right now. This is Group Chat Football Live. I'm Peter Ariz. That is D Money. Appreciate everyone who's on with us right now. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and get in the comments section. Let us know what you want to hear and see here on Group Chat Football Live. If there's a program that you guys want to hear more about, if you guys have certain questions on your favorite team, let us know and we'll try to answer it as best as we possibly can. So last topic here for the day, unless something crazy breaks while we're on air, the USC Trojans, Lincoln Riley, a huge season up ahead for him. I mean, I would say this is make or break. Really, you can't have another season like you had this last year, which you saw some progress on the defensive side of the ball. You retain your defensive coordinator, DeAnton Lynn, who is a Penn State alum, played there. There was some talk about him potentially going over to Penn State. Obviously, they ended up getting Jim Knowles from Ohio State, so they're very happy about that. But there's progress there. Offensively, up and down. You got to marry both sides of the ball now. And it starts with continuing to add talent to the roster, which they've lost a lot, but they've also done a great job between last year's recruiting class and then the portal cycle here. And they have a huge weekend coming up for the next recruiting class.
Yeah, this is a loaded weekend. And I think here's the theme overall with this recruiting class. You've brought in Chad Bowden from Notre Dame. According to reports, he was making about $300,000 at Notre Dame to be their GM. Now he's the GM of USC, making almost or up to $1 million. So this is really about Chad Bowden, who helped assemble a championship roster at Notre Dame, which without the best budget in the world, a lot of great evaluations, a lot of great system fits, a clear identity for what he wanted at Notre Dame and what you saw on the field. And that to me is what USC needs. When you think about USC when they're winning championships, strong offensive line, strong defensive line, strong running game, premier receivers, pro-style quarterbacks. That was the formula. I think the offensive line has fallen off considerably from USC's prime, and USC is a program historically that has had some of the best offensive linemen we've ever seen in football. That's fallen off. The defensive line, the consistency of the defensive line, I think is far beyond the days of guys like Sean Cody, which you used to have where you had first, second rounders every single year at USC. It's just not what it used to be up front. I think those are two areas you'd like to see improve. And also keeping talent home. I'm looking at the California rankings according to the 247 composite for the 2025 recruiting class. I'm just going to go by the schools, not the players. These are the top 10 players where they went to school. Alabama. Number 2 is USC. Husan Longstreet, quarterback of the future, absolute cannon, looked spectacular in the Polynesian Bowl. So you got number 1 player, Dijon Lee, going to Alabama, number 2 going to USC. But then look at after that. Alabama, that's 3 of the top 4. Notre Dame with Chad Bowden. Texas A&M. Then you go back to Southern California, Matai Tagoa, linebacker from San Clemente. But now you go back. Texas A&M again. Penn State. Texas A&M again. And then University of Miami. You got Alabama, Texas A&M getting multiple players in your top 10 in California. Geography, was not my strong suit, but clearly something is off there. When a guy like Hayden Lowe, right in your backyard at a position that you need help, that pass rush position, he's committed to USC, flips to University of Miami on the other side of the map. That's a problem if you're USC. Off to a much better start this year in 26, even without Chad Bowden. You're the number 3 class in the country, but clearly by bringing in someone like that and paying that much money, you want to crank it up. And this weekend, which that's what we're talking about, this huge recruiting weekend, you've got a lot of these top local guys on campus. You're talking about Devon Benjamin, number 5 player in the state, safety out of Westlake Village, Oaks Christian. He's on campus. RJ Sermons and Brandon Lockhart already committed, which is a great start. Talanoa Ely from Orange, California. He's going to be on campus. Mark Bowman, tight end who just reclassified from the class of 27. I saw him in person during the OT 7-on-7 in Tampa this past year. Outstanding talent. He caught a long touchdown. Even though he was one of the youngest players in attendance, he stood out big time. Vance Spafford, a wide receiver from Mission Viejo, who's committed to Georgia. Another guy that I saw in person at that OT 7-on-7. Extremely fast, can make plays down the field. Really, really talented player. So you're talking about multiple guys in the top 10 that are already committed.
This is Deshaun Radu, the running back.
Okay, so now we're looking at Deshaun Radu.
Yeah.
So now we're going out of state, but another extremely talented, dynamic player who is on campus. Top 300, top 247 running back. Also have Samota Kataonga, edge rusher, highly rated. Samuela Utu, 4-star offensive lineman. He's on campus as well. So it's not just guys that are local. You got guys all over the place. Trent Mosley, wide receiver, Notre Dame USC battle. Got another wide receiver who just visited Oregon. Caden Dixon-Wyatt, a 4-star receiver. You mentioned Mark Bowman, but you got Israel Briggs on campus. Caleb Tufoa, another highly rated tight end on campus. So a lot of tight ends. Mark Bowman, to me, being the best of the bunch, the recent reclass. Anthony Davis, another 4-star
Here's
linebacker.
Mark Bowman highlights here.
Yeah, just watch this guy. This guy's you could see why he reclassified. He's a man amongst boys in that 27 class. So
Canes Cats Heat 305 says Mark Bowman's going to Georgia. Todd Hartley's going to get him.
We'll see. We'll see how Lincoln Riley's had some success with tight ends, more so in Oklahoma than at USC, but that's someone that he's clearly targeting. You got Josh Holland on campus, Madden Riordan, Jamiron Baker. I mentioned the Sermons and Lockhart committed already there, Xavier Griffin. In terms of the 27 class, it's about elite guys. Number 2 player overall, Richard Wesley. Number 1 cornerback overall nationally, Duve Williams. Number 2 cornerback nationally, Havon Finney Jr. So just a lot of juice on campus, including this man right here, Bowman. But one of the names that, to me, I'm watching extremely close if I am a USC fan is Ryder Lyons. That's the quarterback. He's up in Folsom High School there in Sacramento. His teammate, Jamison Powell, just committed to Ole Miss, and Lane Kiffin is hot on the trail of Ryder Lyons. Ryder Lyons, a quarterback that's been projected to USC for a while. USC's been on him, but Ole Miss is making a strong push. Is he looking at Hussein Longstreet and saying, man, this guy looks like the quarterback of the future. I don't necessarily want to compete with him for 3 years. Maybe he sees a better opportunity to play at Ole Miss. Maybe it's just Lane Kiffin putting on the pressure. But if USC continues to press on Ryder Lyons, you could be looking at a showdown between 2 of the top offensive minds in the country, with Lincoln Riley and Lane Kiffin going after Ryder Lyons. But as of now, I just went through all these names on this big recruiting weekend. Ryder Lyons is not one of them. So that's something to watch. Who's the quarterback of the future going to be for USC?
And here's the Ryder Lyons highlights from this past season.
Yeah, he is a super exciting player, man. I love watching him, just the way he moves around. He is, look how dynamic he is, man. He is so much fun to watch.
Yeah, no, you'd imagine it'd be a good fit, but Lincoln Riley, I mean, look, he's very picky with his quarterbacks.
Yeah. No, he is, he is extremely, extremely discerning. One thing with Ryder Lyons I should mention is he is somebody who potentially could take a mission trip. So that could affect his timing. I mentioned Hussein Longstreet being a competitor. Maybe the timing works out where he's coming in as Longstreet takes off. So that's something else to consider with him. But he's a really dynamic player that has been projected to USC, but is starting to get Ole Miss buzz.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if he ends up in Ole Miss. He has to do the mission before Ole Miss.
Yeah, that's a tough place. They'll test anybody's faith over there.
We had a question here from. Is there anything else on the USC recruiting weekend?
Nope.
Do you want to talk about?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah. Big weekend ahead though. If you're a Trojans fan, we have a comment here. Question from Hassan asking if Miami was interested in the defensive lineman from Ohio State. That's Hiro Kanu, who just committed. We did a video on him yesterday. And it's funny, D, before we recorded that video, I told you, man, I'm surprised Miami didn't make a run at this guy because he was late to football. Someone who has the size, I mean, 6'5", 320, 330, it looks like, and was, on one of the most talented defensive lines in the country at Ohio State. So it's easy to say why he wasn't playing much. But someone who I think good get for Texas.
Yeah, a guy with just add into your rotation. He's got the body type. He's got the athleticism. I think with Miami, they're really trying to build up some of their younger defensive linemen, your Armando Blunts, your Justin Scotts. Josh Horton, perhaps, guys that you've invested a lot in, you want to see play. So to bring in a guy who is more of a projection, albeit a veteran projection, I don't think that's what they were necessarily looking for. But look, Texas is recruiting at a pretty high level. One of the only programs recruiting on the level of Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. So clearly they identified this as a talent that could help them quite a bit. They lost Adir Mitchell to LSU, guy that was going to be in their rotation. Different player with Canoe, but I could see him filling that void in the rotation.
Yeah, body types like this don't come on the market very often. So Texas was on him, UF was on him, Georgia was on him, like we said. I mean, he was a wanted man without a doubt. So that wraps it up here for Group Chat Football Live. Appreciate everyone who was on with us today. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We'll be back tomorrow. See you guys then.
See you tomorrow.